I feel I know you. Have we met?
Lysandra is the Ice Witch of the Freljord, a complex character that is frequently considered to be evil by most players, but others see a heroine in her. Unfortunately, her champion card in Legends of Runeterra doesn't wholly capture the harshness of her quest. What is the real story of the Queen of the Frostguard? What's the problem with the Watcher's design? And how could it have been implemented better into Legends of Runeterra? Around 8,000 years ago, three sisters united and ruled the Freljord together, Avarosa, Serilda and Lysandra. But the cracks in their allegiance would not take too long to show. In her dreams, Lysandra met obscure and twisted entities called the Watchers that offered her and her people immortality and magical powers in exchange for pledging servitude to them, an agreement that she accepted. Her sisters were upset to find out that Lysandra put the Freljord under the service of otherworldly beasts, but she couldn't understand why they couldn't see she only made her people stronger and fiercer. This tension gradually increased until Avarosa and Serilda decided to confront Lysandra and end their slavery by declaring war to her sibling. In the final battle of the War of the Three Sisters, the Watchers finally made their first appearance in Runeterra. Wretched horrors from the void, only concerned with the obliteration of everything. Lysandra finally grasped the atrocious true nature of these creatures, and now, conscious that she was tricked, she knew what had to be done before the world was undone. Channeling the magic of every single warrior and creature present on the battlefield, she summoned forth an avalanche of true ice to seal the rift between Runeterra and the void, entombing the Watchers in the ice alongside her sisters and their armies, a sacrifice to save the world. But as strong as true ice is, the Watchers are even stronger, and their desire for destructions brings the ice to a thaw. For these past 8,000 years, Lysandra has tricked, kidnapped and subdued hundreds of legendary warriors from all across Runeterra to entomb them in rock formations of black ice in the depths of her bastion. They remain in a half-sleep, half-dead state, so they feed the Watchers a steady supply of dreams, so they don't ever wake up. She even enters into the mind of these creatures with her dream-walking powers, to make sure there's no interruption to their sleep and nothing wakes them up. But no one in current-day Runeterra knows about this. Ever since that fateful day, she started to rewrite history, erasing any trace of the conflict with the Watchers and the mistakes she committed. Consumed by guilt and incapable of trusting anyone since the Watchers fooled her, Lysandra is set on fixing her mistake by herself, letting no one know the truth about the time she blundered the entire world, and controlling every single variable over her quest to save the Freljord, or at least delay its doom. Her whole personality is very well translated into Legends of Runeterra, as a controlling person such as her fits control archetypes, and the looming aura of a power way beyond understanding resurfacing if time allows it is exactly what you get from her deck. However, the power of the Watcher is extremely biased towards Lysandra. It's a follower you play on her side and obliterates only the enemy deck. Where is the primal Watcher that longs for the undoing of all existence? Where does this sudden urge to keep Lysandra and her allies outside of its plans of utter obliteration of the universe come from? Is it gratitude for having offered them such a great place to stay for the last 8,000 years? Not only this, but when you win with Lysandra by summoning the Watcher, it doesn't really feel like a victory of Lysandra herself. It looks like someone completely failing to deal with a situation.
I thought there was more time.
But somehow, everything ends up being just fine. This is even worsened by the fact that in the first version of her story, she never regretted making the pact with them, and she was not working to keep them asleep, but to wake them up. This was retconned into the story we have already told, but many people still believe Lysandra wants the Watchers to return, and this kind of mechanics don't help to clear this up. But how can we make the Watcher reflect his true nature during gameplay? Probably the truest way to implement the Watcher would be to overload the CPU of the devices in which the players are playing the game until they set on fire, representing the end of everything that the Watchers bring. But for sure, some people would unreasonably complain about a good solution like this. What about maybe instantly ending the game with a draw? This would also encapsulate the nature of the Watcher, but won't be that fun for any of the players, right? Now, seriously, what could be done? I think this could have been a perfect chance to introduce a symmetrical effect with asymmetric consequences. What do I mean by this? Take Veteran Investigator for example. His effect is a symmetrical one, offering both players the same effect, but when you see him played in this context, the consequences are quite asymmetrical. Quite similarly, we have the Hexcore Fountain. Once again, both players gain the same advantage, but in this context, it's not the same advantage, it's pretty much the opposite of an advantage. They are both positive effects, and the strategy around it revolves around developing a side effect only applicable to the enemy that undoes any advantage they could obtain from it, while you keep the original positive effect. We also have examples on the other side of the spectrum. Ember Maiden deals 1 damage to everything, but with the proper setup, this doesn't affect both players the same way. This would be a negative asymmetric effect, with a strategy revolving around adapting to it in order to make it neutral or even benefiting from it, while the enemy suffers alone the disadvantage that should have been shared between you two. Now that we know these concepts, we could brainstorm a much scarier Watcher that would bring the destruction of everyone, but still rewarding the Lysandra player. I'm gonna go through 3 different iterations I made up, but there are endless possibilities. We could envision a different Watcher switching its effect from mill to symmetrical damage, dealing 1 damage 20 times to each Nexus. It's straight up annihilation to both players, but Lysandra manages to protect you from this by making your Nexus tough. However, if we want to keep the flavor of the Watcher undoing existence, we could make the mill symmetrical and design a workaround for the Lysandra player by creating a spell that refills her deck while it reenacts the moments in which Lysandra freezes and entombs everything under true ice. Allies, Watchers, sisters, enemies, all it takes to fix her mistake. Lastly, if we want to avoid having to create new layers of complexity, we could modify the way Lysandra works, switching something from her kit to grant her a natural way of refilling her deck. By creating the ice shard in the deck at the round end, Lysandra will always have a card to draw at the start of her next turn, avoiding getting self-milled. However, the Watcher has been recently changed from an almost instant win condition to a card that starts an endgame phase in your favor. If we take this as a design choice instead of just a nerf, a symmetrical mill would not give you the upper hand, so something new should be introduced to empower her in this final stand. These are just 3 examples of lines of design that her card could take, but not definitive solutions, as these create other kinds of interactions and counterplay strategies that have to be taken into account and be properly playtested. And the best solution should be something that organically comes together and doesn't feel forced, something difficult when changing a card this way. What solution would you have given to this problem? Did you enjoy the video? Would you like me to cover another champion in this series? Tell me all about it in the comments, and as always, like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next one. See ya!